Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're now learning Mishnah Erevin and Perek Aleph, Chapter 1. We will be doing two Mishnayos today, Mishnah Gimel and Mishnah Dal, Mishnah 3 and Mishnah 4. HaKaira Sha'amru, the crossbeam that they spoke about, and the crossbeam that was mentioned, that is put over the opening of the alleyway to let you know that the alleyway ends here and Shizram begins afterwards. Rechava, it has to be wide enough kadei lakabel ariach, to be able to hold a brick that's called an ariach. What is that? Why is it called an ariach? The ariach, and the brick referred to as an ariach, is chatzi levena, is half a brick, shal shloisha tefachim, of 3 tefachim. A levena, when you refer to a brick as a levena, it means it's 3 tefachim by 3 tefachim. If it's an ariach, it's half, then it's 1 by 3. So the beam has to be wide enough to be able to hold that kind of a brick. Da'aya l'kaira, but it's enough for the beam, shetahei rechava tefach, that it only has to be wide a tefach, kadei l'kabel ariach la'arkai, to be able to hold the half brick to its length. Meaning, we're saying that the dimensions of the half brick is 1.5 by 3. For the crossbeam to hold the brick, you don't need for the crossbeam to be that complete, to do that same dimension. The crossbeam could actually be 1 tefach wide. What you're going to do is you're going to position the ariach, the half brick, its length along the length of the beam. So 1 tefach, let's call it the middle tefach of the the middle tefach of the 1.5 will be sitting on the beam. A quarter of a tefach on each side will be overlapping, will be over the beam. But the way you're going to be able to hold the brick on the beam is by putting cement over those 2 parts that go over the side. So it's really enough to be able, in order to hold such a size brick, which is going to be, again, it's going to be a width of 1.5. It's enough for the width of the beam crossbeam to be 1, because the other half or the other quarter of the brick that goes over the sides, you could support it with cement under it. So that is the first part of the Mishna's discussion about the crossbeam. So the crossbeam has got to be wide enough to hold this kind of brick called an ariach. Then the Mishnah says, Rechava kadei lakabel ariach. It's got to be wide enough in order to hold this kind of a brick. Ubria kadei lakabel ariach. It's got to be strong enough to hold the brick. It's not just enough for it to have the width for it, it's got to have the strength for it. And actually, even though the Mishnah's wording is hold enough to hold this brick, as the Bartanura says, chazak or lispal kaivet ariach shlei teshaber, strong enough to hold the weight of the brick that it shouldn't break. They bring that here on the bottom. According to Yerushalmi, the crossbeam must be strong enough to support a row of bricks along its entire length. The Mishnah doesn't sound like that, but that's what the Yerushalmi seems to say. But okay, so it's got to be strong enough, not only wide enough, but strong enough. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rechava af al pi she'ein bria. It can be wide enough, and it doesn't need to be strong enough. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it doesn't actually have to be able to hold that brick. It has to be wide enough to hold the brick that we should be able to say that this beam now, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you remember in the first Mishnah, there was a question, this cross beam, what does it act as? As a notification, as a reminder, or actually as a wall? Because we say the sides of it go down, halachically. So Rabbi Yehuda says the way it works with the crossbeam is that the sides go down. If the sides go down, therefore, according to him, it's not necessary for it to be strong enough to hold up the brick. You just need the dimension. According to the Tanakama, where the point is that you want the brick to actually be a notification, there already it's going to have to be strong enough to hold the brick. The understanding behind these measurements is that if the beam is either going to be wide enough and strong enough to be able to hold the brick, then that means that there's the possibility of building some kind of a permanent structure here. And if this beam is strong enough to build some kind of a permanent structure on it, then already to people, this is something significant to say, okay, this is where there's a demarcation to say that the alleyway ends here. But were it to be some kind of a flimsy kind of thing that's just lying over it, people would think it's just temporary. and basically not really think that it's being as a demarcation for the end of the alleyway. And therefore, that's why you have this whole discussion about being able to hold the brick, being wide enough to hold the brick, being strong enough to hold the brick, because then the demarcation is something that people see as something permanent and take it serious to know that here's where the alleyway ends. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. So, question.